He once said, "We serial killers are your sons. We are your husbands. We are everywhere." How does a person become this? A predator hiding in plain sight, a monster wearing a human face. To even begin to understand, we have to go deeper, past the screaming headlines and the public horror, into the mind itself. When you strip away the mask, what is left? What, if anything, remains? The question of what drives a person to commit not just one, but a series of unspeakable murders is one of the darkest and most terrifying in all of human psychology. These individuals live among us, often for years, completely undetected behind a painstakingly constructed illusion of normalcy. They aren't mythical beasts with horns and claws. They are people, and that, perhaps, is the most frightening fact of all. We're about to peel back the twisted psychology of some of history's most infamous serial killers. We will journey inside the minds of men like the charismatic predator, the so-called killer clown, who buried his secrets beneath his own home, and the Milwaukee cannibal. By dissecting the layers of their psyche, we seek to understand the chilling reality of what, if anything, remains of their humanity. The Mask of Sanity. In 1941, psychiatrist Hervey Cleckley published a landmark book titled The Mask of Sanity. In it, he described a type of person who presents a convincing, even appealing picture of mental health, but conceals a profoundly disordered and chaotic personality just beneath the surface. This mask is a psychopath's greatest weapon. It's a facade of normalcy, often highlighted by superficial charm and intelligence that allows them to glide through the world unseen, earning trust and luring their prey. And perhaps no one in history wore this mask with more terrifying success than Ted Bundy. To the outside world, Bundy was the definition of a promising young man. He was articulate, had political ambitions, and was seen as handsome and likable by nearly everyone he met. He sharpened this manufactured personality into a weapon. He would feign an injury, maybe putting his arm in a sling, to appear vulnerable and harmless, preying on the compassion of his victims to lure them to their doom. This charm wasn't just for the women he targeted. It fooled everyone, from his girlfriend to the police who initially wrote him off as a suspect. He simply didn't look like a monster, but behind that mask was a bottomless void. Bundy had all the classic traits of a psychopath: a grandiose sense of his own importance, a complete inability to feel remorse, and a stunning talent for pathological lying. He viewed himself as superior, basking in the media spectacle of his own trial and trying to outsmart the legal system with his intellect. This is the very essence of the Mask of Sanity, a hollow man who has learned to perfectly mimic the emotions he cannot actually feel. As psychology professor Thomas Whittaker points out, a trait common to all psychopaths is the ability to lie with ease, to be deceptive. The charm is not a personality. It is a meticulously crafted tool for hunting. It is an act of profound, predatory deception. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, wore a different kind of mask. He wasn't the sophisticated intellectual like Bundy. He was the friendly neighbor, the successful contractor, the civic-minded man who performed as Pogo the Clown at children's parties and charity events. His mask was one of cheerful, almost goofy, community spirit. He was deeply integrated into his suburban Chicago community. using this public image to deflect any and all suspicion. Who would ever suspect the man making children laugh was torturing and murdering young men and boys in his home, burying their bodies in the darkness of his crawl space? Gacy lived a grotesque double life. His respectable social standing was a shield behind which raged a secret world, driven by a desperate need for absolute power and control. He would later joke about his victims, showing not a flicker of remorse at his trial, a chilling testament to the total disconnect between his public face and his private, monstrous reality. The unraveling, triggers and motivations. If the mask of sanity explains how they do it, the next question is the one that keeps us up at night. Why? What forges a mind capable of such atrocities? The motivations of serial killers are not a single, simple answer. They're a toxic cocktail of psychological poisons. But research points to a chillingly consistent pattern: childhood trauma. On average, studies show that about 50% of serial killers experienced psychological abuse, 36% physical abuse, and 26% sexual abuse. While millions of people suffer through horrific childhoods and do not become monsters, for a certain developing personality, this trauma acts as a seed, twisting emotional growth and annihilating the capacity for empathy. John Wayne Gacy's childhood was a brutal landscape of abuse. His alcoholic father subjected him to constant physical and verbal torture, calling him a sissy and belittling him for a heart condition. This relentless humiliation likely fueled a deep-seated rage and a warped obsession with power and masculinity. Psychiatrists theorize Gacy's suppressed homosexuality, born from his father's homophobic torment, may have driven him to kill the very boys he was attracted to, extinguishing the objects of his desire to shield himself from the shame he was forced to endure as a child. His killings weren't just acts of violence. They were rituals of absolute control, a way to dominate and dehumanize others so that he would never feel powerless again. There are also different patterns of motivation. Some killers are hedonistic, driven by a lust for a thrill or for sexual gratification. Ted Bundy lands squarely in this category, with his crimes escalating into sadism and necrophilia. His primary motive was the exercise of power and control over his victims, a need so profound it became the ultimate high. Then there are those like Jeffrey Dahmer, whose motivations were born from a different, more twisted kind of pain, a pathological fear of loneliness and abandonment. Dahmer's childhood was scarred by his parents. He began drinking heavily in high school and retreated into a morbid fantasy world. He didn't want his victims to leave him. Unlike Bundy's hunt for sadistic dominance, Dahmer's actions were driven by a desperate, monstrous need for companionship, the crime and the lack of empathy. At the very core of the serial killer's mind is a profound, echoing void where empathy should be. This is the defining feature of psychopathy, an antisocial personality disorder, a diagnosis many of these killers receive. APD is not just a list of symptoms. It's a persistent, chilling disregard for the rights of others, woven with deceitfulness, impulsivity, and a complete lack of remorse. They see other people not as human beings with hopes, dreams, and fears, but as objects, things to be used for their own gratification. Jeffrey Dahmer's case offers a horrifying glimpse into this emotional abyss. While diagnosed with several personality disorders, including borderline personality disorder, his actions showcase the core of psychopathy. He methodically lured 17 young men and boys to his apartment, drugged them, and then murdered them. His lack of empathy was so absolute that he could commit acts of dismemberment and necrophilia, treating the bodies of his victims as props in his lonely, macabre theater. Though he later admitted his guilt, his description of the crimes was often delivered with a chillingly flat affect, as if recounting a mundane chore rather than confessing to unspeakable horrors. This emotional detachment allowed him to compartmentalize his atrocities, walling off the gruesome reality from any sense of moral consequence. This inability to feel for others is not the same as being insane. Most serial killers are not psychotic. They haven't suffered a complete break from reality, like someone with schizophrenia might. They know the difference between right and wrong. They understand that their actions are illegal and horrifying to the rest of us. They simply do not care. Their reality isn't distorted, but their moral and emotional compass is shattered. For them, the suffering of their victims is either irrelevant or, in some cases, a source of profound pleasure and empowerment. All that matters is the fantasy, whether it's for power, for control, or for a desperate, twisted form of companionship. After peeling back the mask of sanity, tracing the roots of trauma, what is truly left inside the mind of a serial killer? A personality fundamentally broken, a consuming, pathological need. They are, as Bundy warned us, we serial killers are your sons, we are your husbands, we are everywhere. If you found this exploration into the darkness compelling, subscribe for more deep dives into the complexities of the human mind. What are your thoughts on what creates such extreme behavior? Share your perspective in the comments below.